move up in the skill tree where we learn how to do just about everything. Now today we're gonna take on a special kind of metal craft project, specifically the largest etching project I've ever done. Now I went ahead and ordered these spalters here from Bergsnyder. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit of an impulse. I've never had metal armor before. That being said, this is kind of twofold, because one, any character I picture myself playing or armor I'd want to use, I can only really see myself wearing one of them. I kind of like having like one kind of pauldron on one side. The other thing that we thought would be fun is if we actually broke those two pieces up to become two separate like D&D themed pieces of armor. Both for like a paladin or a cleric, one being for like the elf god Corellon, and the other for the dark goddess of spiders, Lolth. Which is the one we're gonna start with today. I wanna start dark and edgy. It should be a lot of fun, so stick around and level up this skill. Now we've made a lot of armor on this show, but only leather armor. So I'm excited to play with some actual metal armor, kind of see how it's constructed. Besides, metal armor just does a better job for protecting your soft, squishy bits. Speaking of your soft and squishy bits, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, who's the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Now you can join over 8 million men worldwide who's trusted Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. You get 20% off and free worldwide shipping by using our code at manscaped.com. If my math is right, that's like 16 million balls, which is a lot of balls. It's a lot of balls. They sent me their new Performance Package 4.0, and my self-care routine has never been so on point. It comes with the lawnmower trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, and the Crop Preserver toner. And 2 free gifts, a nifty pair of boxers and a bag to keep everything in. And the trimmers are waterproof, so it's super easy to use them in the shower, so you don't have to worry about making a mess of the floor or your balls. I got to use this thing firsthand, and let me tell you what, my boys have never been so smooth. The end result can best be described as breathtaking, inspiring even. I'd show you, but YouTube would for sure take that down. They'd take that down. Yeah, they'd take it down. So you're just gonna have to experience it for yourself, not my balls, the trimmer. You know what I mean. So get your 20% off and free shipping with our discount code at manscaped.com. Okay, so these are the actual pieces of armor we're gonna be playing with. I'm not gonna lie, these are really slick looking. To make it more slick though, Maddie came up with this drawing right here of what she kind of thinks it should look like. First things first though, these things ship with oil on them to stop them from being rusty. So I went in with a cloth and just removed all that surface oil first, then busted out some of this denatured alcohol just to get all the rest of it off. We're gonna need to spray paint this thing first, which, trust me, just come along this journey with me. But in order for that paint to stick, we can't have that oil residue on it. Also, since we're gonna be painting, I went ahead and used some masking tape on all of the leather bits, like the buckles and the straps in between things, just to make sure I didn't get any paint on them. The paint I use is just this gray primer and filler. It doesn't really matter too much what kind you use, but the nice thing about this primer is if I just hit it with a hairdryer, it dried almost immediately. And I had to kind of hurry up and dry them because they like overlapped onto each other, right? So if one was painted and the other one touched it, it would kind of rub off right there. With those good, I just continued to paint until the whole thing was covered. Then dried it off as best as I could with my hairdryer. Okay, so on the next one, I think I'm gonna try to learn how to actually make a template for these things. Mostly because I think it'll be easier for you at home if you're not particularly like artistically inclined to maybe print some stuff off or be able to trace some things onto it. For me, for now though, I just decided to freehand this design onto here. It's not terribly complex, just kind of spider webs and stuff. And I was pretty sure I could just do it, and because it's supposed to be like dark and evil, like it's okay if it's a little bit rough looking. It's supposed to be rough looking, it's evil. That's why I started with it, in case I screw up. Oh, real quick though, while you're drawing on this thing, if you decide to draw on it that way, you don't want to use a very hard pencil. Like I'm using this 4B pencil that's actually really soft, so it doesn't take a lot of pressure to draw on that paint. With a hard pencil, you actually might start scraping the paint off, which you don't want to do in case you have to make any corrections. And speaking of corrections, if you do decide to draw right on the paint and you mess up a little bit, you can totally erase it, but a regular eraser, again, might remove some of that paint. So I end up using this kneaded eraser here. Using a kneaded eraser, if you do mess up, you just kind of push it against the marking and it'll lift it right off. No need to rub with the eraser. So I just continued along this way, drawing out the design and using like a coin to trace these little semicircles down at the bottoms and really just doing whatever I needed to do to get that design onto here. Again, it was really simple, so it didn't take very long for me to actually do. Okay, so once that is all drawn out, we now need to start exposing the metal wherever we want an etching to occur. To do that, I just busted out a stylus and started retracing my lines, scraping away the paint. Now, I've done these etchings before, but here's a technique I've never tried. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove like a section first, so in this case, the spiders, and we're gonna etch those in first. Then we're gonna remove the webs behind it and we'll etch everything again together. Hopefully the results are gonna be that the spiders are deeper and the webs more look kind of like a background thing. Hopefully. We'll see how it goes. But as you can see here, I just removed all of the paint and markings from that spider until it was bare metal underneath. Then continued along with the rest of the design doing the same thing. And I'm not gonna lie, that by itself looks really cool. Like, I could totally foresee you doing something, maybe you paint your armor black and then you just remove all of the lines. Oh my god, it would look so cool. But since I am going to be engraving this one, and engraving has like liquid that's going to happen, I'm afraid that all of the graphite drawing is going to go away. It's going to wash off once I start putting that liquid on. So I just traced back over them with a Sharpie to make sure they didn't go anywhere. Now it's time to start engraving. Now, I've done this before a couple of times, like this episode here, but I've decided to try a couple of different things here. So first, we have to make our electrolyte solution. To do this, I just add a boatload of salt to a bowl, and then add some vinegar and stir to try to combine it all together. And this is the first difference. So usually I just use water and salt, and that's worked perfectly fine for me in the past. But I've read somewhere recently that the vinegar might work better, so I'm just giving it a go. Now, we're gonna be electro etching, so of course we need a source of electricity. You can totally just do this with like a 9-volt battery. I think the first time I tried this was with a 9-volt battery. But for this one, since it's such a big project, I decided to use this 12-volt car charger. All you really gotta do is connect the positive end to the thing that you're trying to etch, and then the negative side you're gonna put onto the thing that you're using to etch. Now, normally I just use a piece of cotton that I've dipped into that electrolyte solution and I put it right onto that clamp. But this is the second difference here. I wanted to try to engrave as much area as possible all at once. Mostly because I want it to be even, right? If I do it like from spot to spot, I might not spend as much time on one spot as I do on another, and it just won't be even. Luckily, I just happen to have this big old plate of steel laying around with these legs coming off. Actually, I think that was the original stand for my leather sewing machine. Anyways, to that, I added this strip of ripped up t-shirt all around it to give the electrolyte something to soak into. Then I soak that in the electrolyte solution, and finally connect my negative terminal to the metal. Now, in order to etch, all I have to do is set that plate down right onto the bare metal. As the DC current flows through, completing that circuit, it takes with it a little bits of steel ions, basically just eating away at the metal in the spots that are exposed. And this large plate seemed to work really well, though I also went back in with just some cotton soaked in my solution to get more detailed areas because I wanted to make sure they really showed up. This is where I had a bit of a theory. So the cotton wrapped around that thing with the solution on it is conductive, right? It's what's letting it actually connect to the metal. So I thought, what if we just cut out the middleman and laid a whole bunch of pieces of cotton down, making sure they were all touching each other, then connecting directly to that. In theory, this should allow the current to flow through that whole little mat o' cotton and do the same thing. But yeah, that totally did the job. By doing this, I was able to engrave large portions all at once, making sure they were nice and even. I got the other spider this way, those little kind of star-shaped web areas. And it's hard to tell where I've done it from this video, but the metal definitely becomes kind of more pitted and dull in color once it's been engraved. Now, though the process was easy, for a project this big, it took a long time to do. Like, because I was able to lay those mats o' cotton down and put the thing on top of it, I could just kind of walk away and do other stuff in the meantime. But because I wanted them to be nice and deep, I'd leave them for like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes at a time before I moved that whole mat to make sure that everything was covered. But with that portion done, it was time to move on to the next portion, which was removing all of the paint from that web design. Again, I just went in with my stylus and tried to make this as even and smooth as possible. This is another bit that took a real long time. But again, look at how cool that looks once it's removed. From here, it was more of the same, just putting my pads of cotton down and etching as evenly as I could as I went. I also went in with a singular piece of cotton just to make sure I was getting all those detail pieces nice and clear. Once that was all done, I hit the whole thing with some acetone to start removing the paint and see how we did. And oh my god, look at how cool that is. The etching took perfectly. I was so excited as I'm removing that paint and seeing our project come to life. Oh my god, there are little times in projects like that where things just kind of come together and you're like, oh, it's gonna be awesome. I was worried, but it's gonna be awesome. The only thing I can say on it that I wasn't a huge fan of is like kind of towards the spider in some of the areas, it looks like it got more pitted along the image than I wanted it to. And I think that's because I only added one thin coat of spray paint. I probably should have hit it a couple more times just to make sure it was built up enough. But you have to remove that afterwards though, right? So then you're gonna be fighting that. So it's really like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Do you want it to be harder work or do you want it to be like super crisp? But I am completely pleased with this. I love how that looks. That being said, I want to darken up that engraving just a little bit. So I went back in with an acrylic black paint and just kind of smeared it in all over the place. Then immediately went back through with a rag and cleaned it up. And though it's hard to tell on camera that it's really much darker, when you see these top layers as opposed to the bottom layers here, you can definitely see that they stand out a bit more. To add just a little more pop to everything, I decided to go back in with my airbrush and just add a little bit of black here and there to add some depth, extra shading. Almost exactly what I would do if I was making like fake armor. Like if I made it out of foam or something and I wanted to make it look kind of battle worn and like there was a lot more depth to it. And I think it added a whole bunch of character to this thing. Not only that, but it makes it look more dark. Like I want this to be kind of drow armor. So aside from painting it black and then scraping it away like we were talking about doing maybe later on, this was just a nice way to really darken that up and show that it's got kind of a dark edge to it. But now it's time to add in some pops of color. If you remember this image here, there are those really nice red notes that bring everything to life. To make these, I end up grabbing some of this model car enamel in candy red. And the candy red is dope because it if you look at it from different angles, it kind of shimmers and glistens and it's super deep. So with a fine paintbrush, I just kind of went along in all the little hourglasses here, making sure they're nice and filled in, and then went back through with the trim all around the edges of those bottoms and up close to the top. Then once that was done, I hit the whole thing with this crystal clear enamel. This will not only protect the paint job and the metal from rusting, but it gives all the paint job that I just put down that can seem kind of flat a whole bunch of depth. And oh my god, look at how dope this thing looks. For my first attempt doing anything like this, oh, I'm so happy with how this came out. Like the enamel makes it glisten and these pops of red, oh, that candy red. It's so gorgeous. Tell me you couldn't see a drow running around with this thing. Oh, it's so cool. Look at it. Look at how cool this thing is. Oh, I love it so much. I love how this came out. I love the D&D theming to it. Oh, speaking of which, Baldur's Gate 3 just came out, and I'm gonna play it no matter what. I'm very excited to play it. But would you be interested in watching, us streaming playing Baldur's Gate 3? Let us know down in the comment section below. I'm really interested to see if that's something you'd care to watch. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, why don't you give me some of that like it love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. In the meantime, though, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a great way to support this channel. Another great way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon, and honestly, they make this thing work. We couldn't afford to do any of this without them. Special thanks to our newest high-tier level Patreon members, Hoover Tesla and Deb Wozniak. Seriously though, we cannot do this without your support, so again, it means the world to us. Thank you so much. If you'd like to support what we do here, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can click on one of these here that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps too. Well, you decide which one. I'm going to don my armor. Oh my god, it's so cool. I love it so much.